Oh, ladies and gentlemen, look what we have here. This is actually mine now. I've done some competitions with it. It's heavy, but it's a really, really nice firearm. I thought I'd just talk about it. There's only like, what, 30,000 of these produced? Hold on a second. It's pretty windy outside. So there weren't a lot of these actually produced. And so to have the luxury of growing up with one in my life and then using one in the military, I got to compete with it in IPSC. I've done, you're talking thousands and thousands of rounds through these Sako 95s. I mean, this is the civilian version, so like 92 something, I don't remember, FS or whatever. This was replaced because the old one fell off and the fat new one got replaced. So when it comes to this particular platform, there really aren't too many people around with as much experience as somebody like me. There's a lot of others in Finland who've competed with these. Well, not that many who've competed with these, but who've gone through military, are in the military, use it all the time, and compete with it. So both sort of civilian and military. I'd say that in its bare form, without any optics, just like this, in this configuration, it's like the best of its kind. When you start to need optics and attachments, then this gun rapidly sort of falls into like another category of firearms. It's not as adequate as a lot of other firearms. Now, a lot of, like for example, a lot of modern AR-15s or other Kalashnikovs. But if you're going bare bones, this is really like the epitome of the 7.62 39 shooters. It really doesn't get better than this. And I shot groups at 150 meters that are about like this. So what? It almost 2 MOA. A little bit over. Like near perfect score, without any optics. Prone shooting. And you got your optics mount here. You can add a piece called a rail system that you can slide on and off, which is great. In the military, we were given ACOGs and aim points, but they added so much weight and so much bulk, and they were essentially useless in the winter because in the winter the snow is so high when you're crawling through the snow, and then it just fucks up the optics immediately. They just get filled with snow and moisture and wet, and you can't see anything through them. And then in the Finnish winter, the transition from day to night is so severe and so, like, just constant throughout the entire day and night that, like, even aim points at their lowest settings were too bright and they would obscure your target. The ACOGs were super sick. They made a lot of sense for this rifle because it's such an accurate AK, and with that weight as well, you don't have a lot of muzzle rise, so as like a DMR rifle, it's not bad. It's not bad. The biggest weakness for the RK95 in the service was that they have a folding stock with a funny prong system that you squeeze like this and fold over, and they were all wobbly. That was a terrible, terrible, terrible stock design, and it really removed a lot of the potential of that rifle and how much potential that rifle had. This one is a fixed stock, so I would, it doesn't have a full auto mechanism, unfortunately, but if something were to happen, for example, and I have to go on the field, I don't think I'll anyway be issued an RK-95, but I would probably take the stock with me or take the whole rifle with me. It's in pristine condition, which you don't really see in the military. But going back to the snow thing, I kept a stick in here. I had a stick I would slide into this gap here under the stock, and then when you're crawling through the snow, I would pull the stick out and jab it through the front sight here to remove all the snow that was compacting. So a lot of us really ended up just not giving a shit about the aim points and the ACOGs. As nice as they were and as fun as they were, when you're running with all that weight and you're breathing all sorts of like fog out of your mouth, it just immediately clogs up the screen. You're running, you get into position, and now you can't see anything through your scope, and you have to anyway use your iron sights. So it's kind of funny because like there's a big move to create, to put optics on everything, but optics are great when there's when the snow isn't 1.5 meters deep. Even iron sights are difficult to use in the snow. You have to constantly be, you're running towards an enemy position, you duck and you jump into the snow. You can't raise your rifle out and aim anymore because there's snow here and there's snow here. So you have to clean the snow out and all this shit just so that you can actually start shooting. So that's like an interesting thing that I learned in the military, which I thought was like really, really revealing on the limitations of optics. I mean, sniper rifles are basically useless in the snow with this optics. We had TRGs with really fat scopes, and unless you kept those scopes completely covered all the time, and the thing is, like, when you're running around in this kind of jungle, dense Finnish forests, and even though Finland is pretty flat, you have massive 5 to 10 meter constant drops in rock formations and mountains and mud things and montos and everything. So the maximum range you're gonna get out of a sniper rifle is anyway like 100 meters. you're not gonna be. It's pretty rare to get yourself in a position where you're gonna need to take longer shots than that. So it's more for taking accurate shots. But even so, it's very important to be very proficient with iron sights because the weather conditions play a pretty significant role in the functioning of your optics. One thing that I really did like to use though was the night vision scope, and I would set that up, and I wouldn't have the cheek rest because the thing is, in Finland it gets so dark in the winter that even night vision scopes don't work. And sometimes it's all you have. So the night vision scopes, you can attach them to your head, of course, so you can see, but that's so heavy and bulky and nasty, and the fucking thing is super uncomfortable, and it doesn't properly fit under your helmet, that it's better to just have it on the gun. And what I would do is use my left eye. So I would keep the night vision abilities of my right eye like constant. So I would never put my right eye into the electrical optics, and I would just look around like this, and and then if I'm shooting in the night, I would just have my left eye in the scope and I would start shooting. And then in the day the night vision scope worked too. You just cover the flap on the front. There's a tiny little hole in the front flap, and you can get some shots off with that. But those night vision goggles, those night vision scopes, the real utility of those, they come out when you start using flares and stuff like that. Overall, I would hate to get myself into a situation where any of that will ever be necessary, but overall, like a really nice rifle, really nice bench shooting rifle. It's a really comfortable gun to hold. You have this, just the front the front grip is just so nice. You can put your fingers in here, and you can have your palms super well supported. So, very, very, very comfortable, very nice rifle to hold. But the weight does wear you down when you're on a 30-kilometer march. You start to just have to, you're forced to rest the gun on your vest like this, and then just carry it like that. It is pretty heavy. I don't exactly know, but online it's easy to find. We have three peep sight options. So you got, I think this was, it's like their standard, probably 150 meters. Then you got your battle sight. And the battle sight, so you flip it down, it's the two peep sights, it's flat. And then you have basically your traditional machine gun sights, or what I call CQB sights. And these are nice when you just want to lob a ton of rounds down range in basically like a acceptable accuracy. If you just need to and then get to cover, it's a bit faster to use those what I call battle sights. I don't really call the peep sights battle sights. To me, those are more like accurate shots battle sight, because they're very nice, but it's not quite as like point and blast as the iron sight itself. The sort of traditional AK style sights, and they have their own little tritium kind of things on them. So here you have your night flip up on the front, and you can pull that down. I tried to use them, but they weren't really all that effective. I would actually put those night sights up just for regular blasting in the forest conditions, just when you're basically spraying and praying. You have a gas shut off, so you can get basically here on the gas block you have a gas shut off, and this is for the barrel mounted grenades launching system. But we never tried those, we never played with those, it's kind of outdated. So the main downside of the weight of this rifle is when you're doing sort of your guerrilla, you got your point man, and then you got your Q behind you, or your aborivi or your aboyono, and everybody's got their guns pointed up, and you're walking through the forest. It starts to, your left arm, man, it just, you start to like, oh, I gotta keep it up, and then after a while, people start to lower their ylävalmius because the gun is so heavy. And people don't have their guns up and ready, and that's where I started to really appreciate bullpups a lot more, because even a heavy bullpup is easy to keep pointing up at all times. So there's a lot of hate for bullpups, but there's a lot of things I started to understand with this particular rifle, like carry handles. When you're running and you got a 10-15 kilo large heavy like anti-tank single-use rocket launcher, and you got this fucking thing on your hand, and you got like all this other shit, and you're running to a position so you can take out a tank, and you're holding the rocket launcher in one hand, you got this gun in the other, you got your bit of binos, or you got your radio, or all these kind of things. Like, wow, even this, like, you don't really have a great place to hold it except here, or even a bit further. That's where the balance is. It's somewhere here. So you're running around with it like this, and it kind of wears you down. Then you got to pull it up if you have to. And at that point, that's when I realized it'd be nice to actually have a carry handle on something like this, just like here, so you can just hold it while you're doing other things. So I started appreciating two things: carrying handles and bullpups. Especially when you have a lot of anti-tank equipment, and you have to do a lot of flanking. In guerrilla warfare, you're doing shoot and run skirmishes and stuff like that. You're not really necessarily holding positions down for extended periods of time. You're moving a lot, you're running a lot. And what I was doing was mechanized guerrilla infantry. We had the CV 9030s and the Fossies, so you You get out of the tank, you get into position. The tank acts as like a machine gun turret with a 20 or 30 millimeter. I have actually one of the shells um, inside, and that thing unleashes hell. And you got three of those in one platoon, plus a posse, which is like a support vehicle. And you got, in a platoon, you got 3 squads that each have a CV-90-30. So this is about, and then you have one squad that has the posse with all the backup equipment, the extra ammo, the medic, the snipers. They're all in the posse. So you have a lot of firepower, a lot of PKMs, a lot of CV-90-30s, a lot of rocket launchers, and each one of those CV-90-30s, they could carry 8 to 12 or something, even more anti-tank mines. And the Finnish anti-tank mines are huge. They're huge anti-tank mines. If I remember correctly, they're the largest anti-tank mines around. So you gotta haul ass, and you gotta haul a lot of ass, and you gotta haul a lot of heavy equipment when you're doing this kind of mechanized guerrilla infantry. And my training officer, the lieutenant, well, I don't actually know how you translate the ranks, but he was saying, like, guys, special forces is one thing, but they ain't never gonna have to haul the amount of ass you guys are gonna have to haul. And he was telling us quite often, like, this is the peak of the arrow. This is the point of the spear. This is where people will die. And so I started appreciating a lot of things that gun community actually doesn't like. For example, another thing, other than carry handles and bullpups, was that I stopped in the military. I actually stopped running around, because one way you can carry the gun quite well is like this, because the weight is now kind of pushing down, so you can put the buttstock and you can run like this. But there's a lot of places where you can trip and fall in the Finnish forests. And if your finger is off the trigger like this happened to me a lot, and you fall, and the weight of the rifle on top of your trigger finger falls onto a root or a rock, it's fucked. It's bruised. It's like big black bruise. And so what I learned to do is just keep my finger in the trigger housing like this. And for me, finger off the trigger was like this. And that carried on into civilian world, and it's not a good habit. But in the military, this was my finger off the trigger. This is finger on the trigger. This is finger off the trigger. And you can put the safety on in some situations where like it's going to be pretty rough and you're not necessarily going to shoot. But I just did that and just kept my barrel away from other people's faces. But the crazy thing is, the amount of times that people are just walking around like this without the safety on, loaded gun, just fucking beaning the entire fucking platoon. They're just some fat fuck just chilling like this, finger on the trigger, and the entire squad is standing next to him, and he's just there like this, and unbelievable. Like, no wonder people die in the military training, because you just got, you got loaded guns pointing at people's faces and people holding finger on the trigger all over the place. But, what would be interesting is, like, if you had, like, some kind of guard over the trigger finger on some of these rifles, because you don't really want to keep your finger here to protect it from getting beaten around. But, overall, this is the nicest shooting AK. This is the, lowest muzzle rise shooting AK. This is, one of the funnest, most beautiful, most, like, just awesome guns out there. They're super rare as well. But, it is outdated in many ways. Like, you can modernize it, sure, and by modernizing it, you'd really essentially the only thing you'd have to do is put Picatinny here, red dot on there, and that's it. Maybe a flashlight, but do you need that in the forest? You're going to give away your position, and that's it, because you got your rear sight is all the way back here. You got the longest available sight radius for any Kalashnikov platform. This is super important. This is the lock. This keeps the Gancio down, the thing here. Just unlock it. I screwed mine down really tight. And there you go. So really beefy, very heavy duty lid on there. And it does retain enough zero that you don't notice any shift in the thing, but you'll notice that this has loosened itself when your shots aren't straight, when they're not hitting the target. So it makes a huge difference, this locking system here. It makes all the difference in the accuracy of the sighting system and the aiming system. I would keep my mags pointing up. We were given only 3 mags. I carried a few extra ones. I had all my mags sticking up like this, so I could constantly see how much ammo was available. I could pull it out like that, so they weren't pointing down like in the ARs. If you're carrying an AR, a lot of guys that carry them pointing down, so they can do that. But mine, I had them all pointing up like this, and I could just pull it out like that, and it would be ready to go. Because often what you have to do is you're given loose ammo, or you have all your mags here. One has 10 rounds in it, one has 15 rounds in it, one has 20 rounds in it left. So when you got some time, what I used to do is I'd just pull the ammo out of one mag and then just put it in the other, and I would fill up one mag and I would get the ammo out of the other mags. And so that's another thing that I started to appreciate with stripper clips, and the ability to just be able to top up your mags while they're in their housing. So it would be nice to be able to just pull out a strip and just keep filling up your mags, even if it's in the gun. If you got 10 rounds in the mag and your other mags have like 10, 15, whatever random amounts, it'd be nice to just be able to top it up. So there's a lot of things that I started to understand about what already exists in the old world. Like you have the Czech style AK with the bolt that comes back, and you can actually top it up. It has that mechanism. I started thinking, wow, that's pretty cool. So from my experience, really in a funny way, the sort of gun that I would find really good for the Finnish Defense Forces is a bullpup 7.62 39 magazine fed with a carrying handle and the ability to top up magazines with some kind of stripper clip. Doesn't that sound ridiculous? That goes against everything that the gun community supports. It's like the most sacrilegious, unorthodox viewpoint you can have. But and nowadays things are pretty different. So there's a lot of it was a lot of fun in terms of research, in terms of experience. It was really nice to be able to really kind of go through the whole entire spectrum of use cases for this rifle. But it does have its downsides, and it's difficult to hold it up for long periods of time, and that's you start to appreciate certain things and why they exist, and you start to understand why they were concerned at the time that they did exist. But a lot of those things, they're things that are for more experienced shooters. Your random peasant isn't gonna know jack shit. I mean, in boot camp, we had a problem trying to get a guy to know which way to load the mag. I mean, it took 2 hours just to teach him the right way to put the ammo in. Literally, they would put them in backwards, and then they would try and load the mags this way. And it's the boot camp is a really interesting psychological experiment. It's just so weird, the range of things you have to deal with, the range of stupidity you have to deal with. And for example, the first few times we all went to the shooting range, there was guys, they would shoot, they would shoot, and then they would reload and shoot and reload, and you had all this live ammo being thrown out of the gun, and it's just like, dude, what the fuck? And it was actually the same guy who had a problem with all this, like loading the mag the wrong way around, this way around, loading the ammo the wrong way around, loading the gun every time he shoots. But yeah, I mean, is it outdated? It's like yes and no. No, because it's so well machined, and it outperforms every other sort of AK platform out there. But yes, because it is very heavy, and there aren't really too many things you can do to improve the design based off of its existing skeleton. You can't. You add a fucking silencer to this, and you're adding so much extra weight to the front. You add a Picatinny to the front, it adds an enormous amount of weight. You know, when you start adding stuff to it, it starts to get very, very heavy. There's no telescoping buttstock system. So, you know, when you actually start to think about it, it's like yes and no. It's still super modern because it was so well made and so well thought out, but this was before all this, you know, this was before the age of like attach everything on your gun. So yeah, pretty cool. Really like a brilliant, like even holding it with one hand is difficult. Like you got to get your cheek properly on there because it wants to slide out like this. So it's not like that heavy that you can't, like, you know, hold it out with one hand, right? But it is a chunky one. The front grip is just unbelievably comfortable. It really is. It really is like a really nice front grip. So, but I think that's all I really have for you today, folks. I don't think there's much more to talk. I don't even know if the camera is still filming. It's not really like a special video of any type. It's just there aren't too many people with this gun around, so I can talk about it.